everybody. Welcome to Hey Coach Tony. I'm your host, Tony Fiorino. Each week here on Hey Coach Tony, we tackle the hottest topics in youth sports. This week is no different. We open up the studio lines because we want to hear what you guys got to say. The studio lines are already open at 855 Hey Coach. That's 855-439-2622. This morning, we got a cool story this morning. Last week, we witnessed a very disheartening post-game handshake. A couple of them, actually. The University of Georgia played Vanderbilt last week, and there was a debacle at the end of the game that clearly could have gotten out of control. And then on Sunday, the infamous handshake heard around the world between Jim Harbaugh and Jim Schwartz after the Niners beat up on the Lions. It pretty quickly became the talk of the sports world. And you know what? I have often contemplated, I guess, the merits behind the post-game handshake, specifically as it pertains to the world of youth sports. And I've often wondered to myself, just how useful is it? You know, why are we forcing these kids to go through the motions after a game and making them line up to shake hands? Well, you know what? I never really put my foot down on this topic because, quite frankly, I am still a little bit torn. In fact, this week I was really leaning towards talking to everybody from my soapbox and telling you how we should be doing away with the post-game handshake. But then, you know what? I got this magical message. There's a good buddy of mine, and he's been on the show before. His name is Joe Buffard. Joe is a director of the Youth Football Coaches Association of America, the YFBCA. If you haven't been to their website, it's yfbca.org. And they have got, if you're any kind of a football coach, you got to go there. Anyway, Joe, if you remember, was on a panel of guests where I had a couple of high school football coaches, and we were just talking football, which I love to do. Those of you on YouTube see I got my Palomalu jersey on this week. But anyway, Joe was a terrific guest, and when he left the studio that day, I told him that if he ever heard of a really cool story that belongs on this show, that he should send it over to me. Well, when I told him what I was planning about the post-game handshake this week, he sent me a story. And, you know, this story was so compelling, it made me rethink my entire position on this topic. So I'm going to actually just read this. This article is up on yfbca.org. It was written by, I believe either a team mom or a parent or a spectator who was at this game. But let me just get into it because it's kind of brief. October 16th started off as a regular Sunday morning for the families of both the Bridgeport Chargers 8th grade gold team as well as the Somers 8th grade squad from Somers, New York. The Chargers 8th grade gold team was coming into Somers High School as an undefeated team that had won the 2010 7th grade All-American National Championship as well as the first annual 2010 National Good Sportsmanship Award. Now, that combination in and of itself should tell you that there's something pretty unique going on here. While Somers' 8th grade squad was coming into the game having a tough season with an 0-6 record, but still very strong in spirit and eager to play evenly against this undefeated team. At the start of the game, Somers lost possession of the ball at their own 20-yard line, and the Chargers scored on their very first play. So you might think, given what I just stated, that the Somers players would feel defeated and hang their heads, but think again. This small group of players, or as I like to joke, this group of small players, respected the talents of the Chargers, and the same was felt by this undefeated team. Throughout this game, the players, the coaches, and the spectators experienced the most incredible, magical moment of watching the kids enjoy themselves throughout the entire game. The hits, blocks, runs, passes were all appreciated by all who watched because each play was followed by opponents helping each other up, telling each other great block, nice catch, good job, etc. The game concluded with a win for the Chargers, surprise, but you would be hard-pressed to know which team won by the look on the players' faces. The obligatory good game and high-five handshake line was replaced by genuine respect and admiration by both teams. The players took the initiative to appreciate each other's strengths and talents. They all displayed the ultimate characteristics of wonderful young men by giving respect, showing humility, extending kindness in the moment of victory and defeat. In a time where the question is, do handshakes and good game truly teach good sportsmanship? My response is a resounding yes. Well, whoever wrote the article, I want to thank you for screwing up this week's show. But in all candor, and by the way, if you hear the laughing in the background, I am very, very fortunate. I'm going to finish the article first. Winning and losing are important lessons to learn in life, but what happened in this game went beyond the scoreboard. It's showing grace in victory as well as defeat. It's the duty and responsibility of anyone who works with kids to teach these lessons to those entrusted into their care. It can be done. We lived it on that cool October morning. First of all, congratulations to, was it Maddie who wrote the article? Yes. All right. Team Mom from Bridgeport, great lady by the name of Maddie who's sitting in our lobby right now. She wrote that, and I got to tell you, that was one of the best written and best to read articles I've gotten in a long, long time. And you know what? I get emails all the time. For a guy who's just in his 40s, I come across as a crotchety old man with very little patience. And you know what? When it comes to behavior in youth sports, I am just that. But this letter was just one of the most refreshing things I have read in a long time. So what do I do yesterday? I spend most of my day tracking down not one, not two, but three of the coaches that were involved in this story. And I am so very proud to say that they all agreed to join me here in studio this morning, and that's why it's going to sound a little bit like we're hanging out at a bar talking about this, which I would just as well be happy to do with these guys. But we're going to discuss not only this game, we're also going to be discussing the general ideas around this post-game handshake, because you know what? I don't mind saying it. I ain't sold yet, guys. I'm really not sold on the merits of the post-game handshake, and we're going to talk about that. But joining me today in the studio is Coach Emmis, and I'm sorry, was it?
It's Emmis. Yes.
Emmis Crawford.
Yes.
We have Milton Pettway.
Yes.
And we have Coach Joe Paiva, who is representing the Somers team. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being in this morning. I'm really happy to have you all here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Like I said, receiving this article was really, by the way, we're going to take your calls on this story throughout the morning, so if you got something to say, if I miss something, if I screw something up, you call me in the studio at 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. You want to post something up, find Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio up on Facebook. We're going to keep all the lines open for you guys. One of the interesting things, and I'm going to start here with Coach Paiva, not just because you guys won the game, and so I'm not being gracious to the guy who lost, but from what I understand, Coach Paiva, there's a lot more to this story. And it actually started before the first snap ever took place. So do me a favor, can you walk us through a little bit of what you, as a coach, you saw this coming, right? Because if you were at the game, I don't know what the hell's in the drinking water in Connecticut. These boys from Bridgeport, they are not exactly tiny. So Coach Paiva shows up with his mighty mites from Somers, and I'm overstating it. The Somers program is very, very good. It's led, at the very top by my buddy Coach DiMatteo, as you know. But Coach Paiva, you saw this coming, right? So you got to do something to get your kids ready and to set the right tone for the game. Explain to our listeners what exactly you did.
Well, going into it, you practice all week as you do for every game. The kids know who the opponent is. We actually, try to prepare our kids for each opponent, what they do on offense, how they run their defense, like any good football team would. Our team is, as you stated, small in stature. And Bridgeport is, as you stated, very big. So, you can coach them up all you want. But, the kids do realize that, it's kind of a mountain that they can't climb. And,
You can't coach big, right?
No, you can't coach big. No. So I think having said that, you go into it with some realistic expectations. Say, look, if we can hold our own, if we can show these guys we're football players, they'll respect us, we'll respect them. And, the outcome, the scoreboard is really for the fans, it's really for the parents. It's really not for the coaches. It's not for the kids.
But you're walking, at the start of every game, you got to check in each other's players. You're walking across the field, and you're looking at some kids that are probably bigger than you are, and you're not a tiny guy.
Yeah.
So something's going through your head. You got to be thinking, I got to do something. I got to break the ice. So what did you do?
Well, I did make it my business this particular game to go over and check in the Bridgeport players. Before each game in our league, you're required to, as a coach, go to the other team, introduce yourself, and part of the routine is that, and we teach our kids, and the Bridgeport coaches teach their kids, another coach, another grown man is going to come over here, you show him respect, you look him in the eye, you give him a handshake, and that's part of what the league does, which I think is tremendous. I think the kids, we teach our kids, look them in the eye, say hello. I mean, they're 13-year-old kids. It's a lesson. It's an opportunity to teach them a lesson. So when I went over to the Bridgeport coaches, I had a few moments where I, joked around with them and let them know that, hey guys, obviously, this is going to be an uphill battle for our team. And, they agreed that, hey coach, we know what it's all about. So, we had that conversation before the game. And, when I was checking their kids in, I made it a point to kind of make a few jokes with regard to how big they were.
Well, give us listen, I tell off-color jokes all the time. You got to give me a couple. What did you say to these guys?
Well, Maddie, actually, who's not in the room, was listening outside. She was there, and we're checking them in. And I think the first thing I said was, "Hey, boys, before we start checking in, one of you guys left your lights on in the parking lot." So they all laughed as they did just now. And
that's a good one.
I think it loosened everybody up, and then.
Well, actually, I got to interject because I believe even more interesting to the story was the starting quarterback didn't play that day because he had jury duty.
I think that's yeah.
You think I'm going to let you steal a mic today? Are you kidding me? All right. Comic relief aside. All right, so you made some jokes with the kids.
Made some jokes with the kids, yeah. The kids actually appreciated it, and, I even went so far as, they asked me, Coach, who's your son? And I told them, I said, number 25. And Maddie said, you want a halo around your son? I said, yeah, 25, watch out for 25. So we had some fun with it, and I think, the coaches certainly understood what this was all about, and it showed on the football field.
Well, I mean, what was really compelling about this story, and later on today up on Facebook, I am going to post a couple of pictures that were sent to me, and for a couple of reasons. One is there's a picture of, this wasn't a post-game handshake. There were kids hugging each other. It was really very, very cool. But one of the pictures that was sent to me in advance of the story was one kid hugging another kid. And I don't want to keep dwelling on this because now, again, Milton and Emmis are laughing because they know the picture. There is a kid who is just very, very big, and he is hugging a kid that is very, very small. And apparently this isn't the smallest kid from Somers, and this is not the biggest kid from Bridgeport. And it looks like this is just, oxymoron personified in a photo. The other is, and we're going to talk about this later, the teams after the game, there was a celebration practice, but both teams did it. And like I said, these are the stories you can't make up. There clearly aren't enough of, and I can't say enough about what these three guys, along with the rest of your coaching staff, did to make that particular Saturday an amazing experience for these kids. And it's all going to come back to the real gist of, maybe it's not whether or not we should have the kids shake hands after every game. Maybe it's about making sure they've got the right mindset so they're getting something out of that handshake instead of listen, what do you go to any kid's sports game, anywhere today, when you leave, I challenge any of you, go to any game and sneak onto the field for the post-game handshake, and what are you going to hear? Good game, good game, good game, good game, good game, good game. It reminds me of that old Saturday Night Live skit when the stewardesses, when you were leaving the plane, bye-bye, bye-bye, bye-bye. They're just taught to say good game. These kids were getting involved with each other. Way to go, that was really great, you did this really well. So when we get back, because we got to go to a quick break, that's why I'm kind of segueing, guys. We're going to continue with this story. We're going to take some of your calls at 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. But we're going to talk more about, this terrific experience for these young boys in Bridgeport and Somers. And like I said, then we're going to talk more in general terms about whether or not we really should have the post-game handshake. I got a lot of surprises for you. You're not going to want to miss it. This is Hey Coach Tony. Stick around. All right, well, I'm going to pretend we're on the air. You're back here with, You're with Hey Coach Tony. Hey, guys, I got to tell you, I'm going to be screwing up all day because we're having more fun during the breaks than we're having on the air. But we are joined today by Coach Emmis Crawford and Coach Milton Pettway from Bridgeport, and Coach Joe Paiva from Somers, New York. And we're talking about this just amazing experience these kids had. And before the break, Coach Joe told us how he broke the ice to get the other team ready for the butt kicking that was not to be, apparently, which is good. But you know what, Emmis, Milton, let me ask you guys. Pass the mic over to these guys. First of all, I want to ask you, did Coach Joe Paiva's approach to addressing you guys and the kids before the game have an impact on the flow of the game?
I'm gonna say yes and no.
Okay.
I mean, I'm gonna say we teach our kids not to take any team for granted. You know, no matter the records, no matter the past history or the future of the team. But I mean, if he wouldn't have came up to us and broke the ice like that, I think the game would have still went the same way because his kids played hard and they played with spirit, and it looked like they just wanted to play football. After the first few plays of the game, they were confident and they played hard.
But do you think it set your kids up for? Because think about it, Coach Joe could have easily come over and said, "Hey, you know what? Yeah, you guys are national champs. You're undefeated. But you know what? Not today. We're coming to get you." And you would respect that in a certain way, but wouldn't that maybe fire your kids up to maybe go put up a donut on the defense and maybe go put 45?
Possibly.
So, listen, and by the way, I don't want to make it sound like you guys would do that because, I mean, like I said in the article, they didn't just win the national championship. They won the National Sportsmanship Award. So let's just say it was some other team, not Bridgeport, okay? Let's say it was one of those other teams in Candlewood Valley. They may have taken advantage of that situation, but they did not. Now, the real question I have, because it sounds kind of hokey, when the kids were laying each other out and playing hard, were they really helping each other up, saying nice block, good tackle? Are you really telling me that happened?
Yes, it did. It happened. It was one play in the end zone where our receiver, our tallest receiver actually, Edens, caught a pass in the end zone, and I think it was number 20, tell him, good catch. And he looked at the kid and said, thanks. And he slapped him on the helmet and went right back to the huddle.
I mean, we're laughing, and a lot of football. And you know what? And by the way, I did have conversations with football coaches, many of them, and I'm not going to name names, but I will tell you, some guys are like, why are you doing this story? If I was on the losing end of that game, I'd be a little humiliated. I'd be embarrassed. That's not what the game's about. You know, you basically bowed to a better team and told them, we know you're going to beat us. And my response was, so what? I mean, how old are these kids? 13 years old?
Right.
These are eighth grade boys.
Right.
You got the rest of your life to be told how much you stink. You know, It doesn't have to happen in eighth grade. God knows. So for all those coaches who are listening saying, I would have done it different, yeah, well, you would have done it wrong. And, you know, you want to tell me something? Great. Give me a call in the studio at 855-HEY-COACH. Now, the show today is really about the post-game handshake. I understand after the game, Bridgeport, you're used to winning, which is good. You guys have a little bit of a celebration that you do.
Yes.
After the game.
Yes.
All right. Well, first of all, tell me, what exactly do you guys do after a win?
Okay, after a game, after we shake hands, all the kids usually go in the middle of the field. They put one or two kids in the middle of a circle, and they do their chant. And then they all fall on the ground, and the kids in the middle of the circle jump like they were a bomb exploding or something.
Okay. Now, you do this home or away, correct?
Yes.
All right. Now, before the phone lines light up, let me acknowledge that had Coach Joe not broken the ice, I don't know how I would react to somebody going to the 50-yard line on my field celebrating a win. Now, we don't need to discuss that because the good news is not only did Coach Joe and you guys all break the ice, but something was different about this post-game celebration, correct?
Yes.
What was different about this one?
Well, before they actually celebrated, the coaches were shaking hands on the field, and all of a sudden we turned around, and before you know, the Bridgeport kids went and got all the Summers kids and put them in the middle of the circle. And then they did the celebration together.
You can't make this stuff up. I mean, I got to tell you, man, I am so really impressed with the way you guys are handling your situation. And I know it's easier to win with grace than to lose with dignity, but you guys are clearly doing something right. And again, I'm going to keep restating it. You're not just a really, really good group of 8th grade football players and coaches. You guys are nationally recognized for your sportsmanship and inviting the Somers kids into the middle. When I first heard this, and by the way, I heard it from Coach Joe. This wasn't the Bridgeport coaches telling me, here's how great we are. again, the article that was written is a very humble article. You guys could have really beefed that thing up a lot more. Most of the really cool stuff from the article I got from talking to Coach Joe Paiva.
Okay.
So you guys made your mark on the Somers coaches and the Somers kids, and I would hope the Somers parents as well. For every Somers versus Bridgeport game that happens, and they happen all over the country, for everyone like this that I hear about, there are 100 that don't end anywhere near as nicely. Let's face it, right? Like, I mean, so we got all the fairy dust out of the way. You guys are great. You guys are great. I'm very excited to be covering this story. Plenty of coaches who, when they are faced with the prospects of pounding on a weaker opponent, take full advantage of it. We know that. And like I said, they either go for the shutout or they pile on the points. How do you think, and I'm going to give it to Coach Joe for a second, how do you think the losing team would feel, and like to take this away from Somers and Bridgeport, what do you think might happen in a post-game handshake after that explosion victory dance on the 50-yard line if it's in your house? Oh, I mean, yeah, Milton and Emmis are still laughing, but not as loud. But let's assume Somers plays Joe's youth football, and they come into Somers and they pound on you and they start doing their midfield dance, and the score was 75-0. And the coaches were like, hey, you say coach let up, and they're like, hey, this is football, that's the way it's supposed to be. What do you think happens in that post-game handshake, Joe?
Well, obviously that's would be kind of disrespectful to the home team. In this case, we were the home team, and we understood that. Actually, before the game, I had no idea that Bridgeport did that type of thing at the 50-yard line. But to your question, the fact that they handle themselves with such sportsmanship, and the fact that they played the game hard, but they respected what our kids were there. They were football players too, and I think that's the key to this whole thing. That you could be a dominant team, you could be a nationally recognized team, but when you're going against another opponent, that opponent is also practicing all week, putting a helmet on, and we're undersized, we're undermanned, and numbers wise they have a lot more boys than we do. So what would they have? What
I said the feel goods are over.
Yeah. What would they have?
Let's get to the question, because I'm leading you. What happens in a post-game handshake when someone doesn't conduct themselves the way Bridgeport did? Give me the short answer.
Obviously you're not really doing it with any kind of meaning behind it. If you're shaking hands, you're kind of not even looking the guy in the eye. If that's what they've done, then you're taking it as a slap in the face, and the handshake becomes.
Well, you take it as a slap in the face, and then sometimes what happens is you get the slap in the face.
Right. Yeah.
Or I don't know if you guys heard the story I did a couple weeks ago. The kid in Ohio who decided to put thumbtacks in his football glove, and he gave his high fives, and he made everybody bleed.
Yeah.
Right.
That's when coaches get punched in the face. That's when guys get smashed in the head with a helmet. So I'm not saying we solved the world's problems here, but I think you guys did. Again, I'll keep saying what an amazing job you did, but this is why I'm still really torn about the proper place for the post-game handshake. Like I said, just a few weeks ago talking about these things. Forget about the the thumbtack in the glove. We had a caller 2 weeks ago. It was Rob from Ardsley, I believe, who sent me an email about a girls' softball game where the post-game handshake, he found out afterwards, all the girls on the losing team spit in their hands before the handshake.
Wow.
I mean, let's face it, your story is great, and I hope you and the kids and everybody remembers it for a long time. There's something inherently wrong with the way we're doing things right now in general terms. First of all, spitting on your hand is just gross. I would spit on my own hand.
I would say that that's up to the coach, and the coach is the adult. The coach is the person that's trying to teach these life lessons to these kids, and that's what it's really all about. You just if you knew your girls softball team was spitting in their hand because they lost, and maybe that's something that one girl said to another, and that caught fire on the team, you got to put an end to it right away, and you got to correct that because that's just wrong.
Absolutely. I mean, spitting in your hand. That one still gets me, and it's young ladies. For the girls who were playing Ardsley that day. But I tell you what's really cool, guys. By the way, I got a little surprise for you. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Gregg Doyel, who's a writer from CBSSports.com. Yeah, he's currently traveling all over the place covering the World Series. He wrote an article this past week, and it was entitled something like "Enough with the stupid post-game handshakes already." Timing couldn't be better. But we're going to dial him into the show. We're going to continue to take your thoughts and your emails. I know I'm not taking many, guys, but I'm having fun with the coaches here. But when we come back, Gregg Doyel is going to join us. We're going to talk more about, the darker side, for lack of a better term, of the post-game handshake, all right? So you're with Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. Stick around.
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. You're with Coach Tony this lovely Saturday morning. Aside from this terrific story between Somers and Bridgeport and how these guys decided to change the post-game handshake in a very positive way, on Wednesday I came across a really cool article. It was on CBSSports.com, and it was called, appropriately enough with the stupid post-game handshakes already. It's a great read. If you haven't seen it, go find it on CBSSports.com. It was written by a guy I really like. His name is Gregg Doyel. He's a very well-respected sports journalist and a good old Southern boy. I love to read his stuff because he's edgy and he pisses a lot of people off. That sound like anybody you guys know? All right. Well, anyway, Gregg is currently jet-setting around the country because he's following the World Series. So I believe late last night he arrived in Texas. But still, he graciously agreed to join us this morning to chime in on this topic. Very pleased to welcome to the show Mr. Gregg Doyel from CBSSports.com. Hey, Gregg, thanks for being with us, man. How you doing this morning? All right, we're going to get Gregg on in a second. The wonderful phone system here at ESPN. All right, Gregg's going to be joining us, and when you get him, just shoot him onto the line with us. But this piece again is in touch. Gregg, do I hear you?
I don't know. I hear me. Do you hear me?
Now I hear you.
Oh, here I am.
How you doing, bud?
You know what? That must be what it feels like. I'm sure it's identical, in fact, to being buried alive and the whole world thinks you're dead and you can't move and yet you're alive and nobody knows it. I'm here buried in my coffin. I'm alive. Can't you hear me? But you couldn't hear me.
That's all right. Yeah, the technical guys here at ESPN bury me every week when I try to have somebody cool on the show.
Nicely done.
Yeah, dude, you're not going to outwit me on my show, man. All right, anyway, this great piece that you wrote, and I loved it. Like I said, it's entitled Enough with the Stupid Post-Game Handshake. Now, it obviously centered around the incident between Harbaugh and Schwartz last Sunday, so I'm not going to go into the whole piece. But, Gregg, you did draw a couple of parallels to youth sports, and I'm going to highlight those right now and ask you a little bit about them. Now, quoting the article, you refer to the post-game handshake as, and I do quote, "That's one of those empty gestures meant to make other people feel good. It's a, 'How are you doing?' to a stranger whose answer doesn't matter because you've already walked past him. You don't ask some guy outside Target how he's doing because you care how he's doing. You ask him that because as a kid, you saw your parents do it, so now you do it. But the worst thing that could happen to you at that moment would be for the stranger outside Target to actually tell you how he's doing, to tell you about his health, his marital problems, about the fact that he's standing outside Target because he's hoping a nice guy like you could spare a few bucks so he can buy himself a sandwich. Empty gestures are the worst. And that's all the post-game handshake is. It's empty, and it's the worst. It's something done from duty, not from desire, and don't you dare tell me it's a teaching moment for the kids out there. By the time most games end, the kids already have learned how to strut in the end zone after taunting the nearest defender, and how to make a 12-yard catch and celebrate as if they struck oil right there in the field, and how to stare down a running back after tackling him after a several-yard gain. The kids aren't learning anything remotely useful during the game, so let's not pretend the teachable moment will come after the game." Now, there's much more to that article, and I do suggest that you read it. But you know what? I love this article, maybe for all the wrong reasons, but I love it, Gregg. And I'm telling you, I hope I'm not alone here. I have often felt this way. In fact, I think every coach and every parent has felt this way, but no one's been brave enough to say it until our buddy here, Gregg Doyel. So, Gregg, tell me, what differentiates the good post-game handshake from the bad post-game handshake? Because I don't know if we got you up early enough to hear the great story we led with today, but clearly there are two sides to this equation. What do you think separates the good post-game handshake from the bad post-game handshake when it comes to the kids?
Well, the good ones are so few and far between. Every now and then you'll see a game where the coaches kind of had a little embrace, and it's obvious they really appreciate each other, whether they like each other or not. Like, wow, your team, you don't know what they're saying, but you figure they're saying, well, your team played hard and you coached hard. That was a fun game. I'll remember this game for a while. Those happen every now and then. They do. It's not like it's never good. But it's kind of like, I wrote something sort of similar. Apparently I'm a big believer in quitting, but I wrote something similar about Twitter a couple of months ago when I said if I was a college football coach or a high school coach for that matter, I'd tell my kids you can't tweet. You can't do it because the upside to tweeting is not anywhere near worth the downside. You say the wrong thing on Twitter and it follows you around forever. Well, the post-game handshake, if it goes wrong, it follows you forever. That Jim Harbaugh post-game handshake will follow him forever. There's just no upside to it. The good happens every now and then, but the bad is so much worse.
And you know what? What's really unique is I think the NFL does it. Part of their post-game handshake is the most appropriate by far, and you guys got to remind me to talk about this because you know what? You speak of the devil, and she picks up the telephone. I think we struck a chord. Maddie said she was going to be quiet all day. She must have heard something that Gregg wrote or said. So we got Maddie calling in online too. So hey, Maddie, you're on Hey Coach Tony. How you doing this morning? We don't have Maddie. All right. Do we still have Gregg? All right. You know what, guys? I'm probably going off the air, but I'm going to have some fun doing it. Let me explain while we're waiting to get Gregg back what I think about the NFL and why their handshake is so effective. They force, I don't know if they force, but the coaches always have a ritualistic handshake after the game. I'm not a big fan of that one because, again, the bad outweighs the good by far. Gregg, you're back. You're out of the coffin?
Actually,
it's Maddie. It's Maddie. All right, hey, Maddie. Sorry we had you in limbo there for a second, right? We're playing God here.
That's okay. I was joining him in the coffin.
All right, good. So we're out of the coffin and we're on the air. What's on your mind, Maddie?
I have a couple of things to say about that. I mean, one of the things that really upsets me and really made me write the article that I wrote was the fact that it's not about making it a situation where you have to do it, you know, after every game. It's why you should have to do it after every game.
I couldn't agree with you more.
If you're playing a sport, whether it's soccer, baseball, football, lacrosse, anything, if you're playing a sport, it's because you love that sport and you appreciate what it takes and the work that it takes to be on that field.
But not everybody
and to appreciate the fact
Maddie.
that you do that work and you know someone else on the other side of the field is doing the same work, you're gonna do that handshake for the right reason. But that comes as being taught that all week long.
Well, thank you for saying being taught that because let's face it, not everybody respects the game. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the problems we have. Joe, I mean, how did you? I got it, and I'm going to keep you on for this because I want to ask Coach Joe, how did you get the kids to respect that game? That's an easy game for the kids to fold up and say, "Oh man, here we go." How did you get the kids to respect that game at that level? Because, listen, gracious winners on Bridgeport's side, and this is not to take anything away from you guys, it's a lot harder to be gracious and good sportsmen when you're staring down the barrel of, somebody's about to steamroll us. How did you get the kids to really respect the game that day?
Well, I think what it boils down to is as a coach, you teach your kids that it's about them. It's not about anybody else. It's about you. It's about you as an individual. It's about what you're prepared to do as a football player. How are you going to help the team? And when it comes to going against an opponent that's decided, you're a decided underdog, you don't go out there to lose, certainly not. But you go out there and you tell your kids you're supposed to conduct yourselves like a football player and play the game hard. And I think that's the message that you give the kids. So, that's what I would say.
I'm very pleased. Emmis, you got something to say?
Also, at the end of that game or at the end of that day, I received 2 emails from 2 parents from Summers, and they said that this is the happiest, or that was the happiest and the most funnest time that they seen their kids have all season. So you say how does he get his kids up for the game? I think it's just I think they do actually love football and they actually had fun playing that day.
Well, there's no doubt they had fun playing that day, and like I said, it's a testament to all the coaches and all the adults involved. I mean, you guys really, like I said, hats off. I should have brought 3 Coach Tony coffee mugs to hand out, but I will send them to you. Promise. Look, they keep stealing mine. I'm drinking out of a Dunkin' Donuts coffee cup today. And by the way, Maddie, I want to thank you for the call. I think Gregg is alive on the table again. Gregg, you still with us?
Yeah, and actually, Maddie and I are talking off air. We're coming.
Dude,
we're having a great conversation, and something Maddie, because of what we're talking about, made me realize I need to say this: that I'm not saying get rid of the post-game handshake at the youth level. I'm just saying at the NFL level, it's not working. It's not teaching the kids sportsmanship. Let them learn it on their own. They're going to learn it on their own. It's like the iPad. They're going to learn that thing on their own, too. Let them learn how to shake hands on their own. They don't need to see Jim Harbaugh and Jim Schwartz being horses patooties.
Well, you know what? Well, nobody ever said patootie on the air. You got to really watch it. The FCC really censors what you say. But anyway, dude, you led me right into what I was saying. The best part about the NFL handshake, and I did this as a player, and what Milton and Emmis don't know is I was the biggest jerk ever when I played ball. And
shocking.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. You're never coming back in the show again. Anyway, so enjoy your time. The point is, the players' side of the NFL postgame handshake is phenomenal, and the reason is they're not forced to do it. It's not a ritual. But let's say, there's a big matchup between Palomalu and LaDainian Tomlinson that day. They're going to go out of their way to knock the snot out of each other. But I'll promise you, when that big matchup is over and that game is over, the first two guys to meet at midfield are going to be those two guys because they respect the game. Nobody has to tell them to respect the game. No one has to force them to respect the game.
Right, they're there at midfield shaking hands because they want to be there. Like you and I just went at it for 3 hours, and now I want to tell you how much I appreciate it was an honor going against you. That's when it's a great thing. It's when the coaches go to midfield and shake hands only because they know they have to. That's when it's resented. And it's kind of weird how I'm a big fan of mixed martial arts, so kids out there don't listen to me, I guess, but I'm a big fan of that. And I love what those guys literally are trying to kill each other for 15 minutes, and when the fight's over, they're hugging like they're best friends, and you just know if there's a bar nearby, they'd go get a glass of sparkling water and drink it together because they're friends. And yet Harbaugh and Schwartz, and it happens all the time, coaches can't do the same thing.
Yeah, you know what? I got to tell you, it is literally the best example, and I'm glad you brought it up because that's the one I really don't get. Because I don't know if I guess there is sportsmanship in mixed martial arts, but I'm telling you, I don't get it.
Well, I'll tell you why, Tony. I'll tell you why. And I don't pretend to be at that level. I'm not even close. But I box for fun. I've had a handful of fights, and I'm trying to turn pro at age 41. So I do it a little bit. And there's some gratitude there. It's kind of like when Palomalu and Ocho Cinco are going at it, and they realize, Ocho Cinco's trying to embarrass Palomalu. Palomalu's trying to take Ocho Cinco's head off. Mm-hmm. But when the game's over, they appreciate each other's efforts, and I can't look good without you being there trying to make me look bad. And MMA and I think boxing is the same way. You're sharing an experience that nobody else is sharing at that exact moment. It's me and you, and nobody else. People can watch it, but they can't understand that you and I. Well, it's almost like being, with your girlfriend. Almost. I mean, there's an experience there that no one else has.
Wait a second. You just talked about beating the crap out of somebody and being with your girlfriend. So, wait a minute. We got Gregg's girlfriend on line 3 and her attorney. We're gonna.
No, I was actually talking about the exchange of bodily fluid with the sweat. That's all I was talking about.
You had to go there on a Saturday morning. All right. Hey, listen, Gregg, I want you to hang on because we do have to go to a break. But that's a great example of this. And I'm just.
Hey, I didn't say we were exchanging bodily fluids and put the word patootie in the same sentence. That'd be a major problem.
Thank you. The FCC is now at the front door. All right, listen. This is way too much fun for a Saturday morning, folks. You're with Hey Coach Tony. Stick around. I'll be right back.
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. This is the show formerly known as Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. We are joined today by Coach Emmis, Coach Milton, and Coach Joe, who were part of an amazing game last week of 8th grade boys. We're also joined by Gregg Doyel, writer extraordinaire and apparently mixed martial artist to be from CBSSports.com. I tell you what, if you've ever read Gregg's articles and the way he writes, he better learn how to fight. I tell you what, charity match between Coach Tony and Gregg Doyel next year will raise some money for cancer. What do you think, Gregg?
You better be pretty good.
I'll kick your butt. Anyway, listen, Gregg, I want to get your thoughts on this because you told me when we talked during the week that you played as a kid. You were into a lot of sports. And, here's an example, by the way, of why I'm so intrigued by this. And I promised you guys I was going to do it. Any of my college teammates are listening. They're going to want to call. So go ahead, 855-HEY-COACH. And I'd love for them to confirm this because people don't buy it. When I played baseball, and I played at very high levels, I was the biggest jerk ever. I would taunt pitchers before the game. I would taunt them during the game. And provided I lit them up, I would give them heat after the game. I'd follow them to their parking lot. I'd follow them to their house and keep telling them how much I lit them up. However, the reason I say this is if a pitcher was really something or happened to have my number that day, or even if I just had a chance to face him a couple of times, what I found was that respect that Gregg was talking about before the break, I developed that respect over the course of a season or maybe two, especially in college when you see the same guys over 4 years. And what would happen is I would seek that guy out, either in between games of a doubleheader or after the game, and I wouldn't just say, good job. We would have a conversation, and we would actually become friends. And to this day, there are guys like John Doherty, if you're listening. He's a buddy of mine. He used to pitch against me. He pitched for the Detroit Tigers. But you know what? When we were in college, I had JD's number, and I lit him up. And we would always talk about it. And to this day, we're still friends. The point is, now at 44, do I wish I had that ability back then to develop that respect? Do I wish I had it a little bit earlier? Yeah, I do. And now as a coach, I'm really trying to figure out that magic ingredient to get the kids there. My son, I coach all the time at very high levels of playing baseball, and I really try to teach these kids that everybody has that same built-in respect as an opponent. You can want to kill them. If it's another pitcher, you want to take him deep, that's what you do, but you still got to respect the guy's efforts. Gregg, you got any opinions on how you get that through to a kid?
I really don't know how you get it through to the kid, other than I don't know if if you're wired this way or if you're taught this way. It's nature versus nurture. For example, my dad coached me a lot as a kid, and he taught me from coaching me, but also being with me at sporting events, is you don't boo the other team. And I realize that's totally foreign to everybody. But his point is you don't boo the other team. You cheer for your team, but you don't boo anybody else. And to this day, I'm horrified when I hear booing, but I'm especially horrified when I hear a home team boo its own guys. But still, I don't like booing. And yet, that's not how the world's operated. The whole world boos everybody. They think it's cool. And so I don't know if my dad taught me that, or if he and I are the only two losers in the world that don't realize it's cool to boo everybody else. I don't know. I think sometimes you got to get lucky. I think some kids just have it in them to realize at a young age, at an immature age, I'd say, because you got it to you later after you matured, but you didn't have it when you were 19 years old. I think some kids, either you have it or you don't when you're 14, that you know that you should have respect for the other side. I'm not sure you can get taught that. It's either you're mature or not.
Well, I don't disagree with that. Matter of fact, up on Facebook, which is Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio, we got Kirk from Chicago who sent a note in, said the idea that sportsmanship should be learned on its own at the youth level is a false premise at best. It's a taught behavior. So we got some conflicting opinions here. It's not the handshake at the end of the game that's at issue. It's what the coaches bring to that handshake that's at issue. Removing the handshake does nothing. Removing and changing attitudes is everything. And I don't disagree with that. At the same time, listen, the guys who are sitting in this room and most of the folks who listen to this show, we take coaching seriously. And I guess what I'm saying is my challenge to all you guys is let's try to teach it. Let's figure out that secret ingredient, and let's really try to teach the kids going into these games. And you know what it is? When we're teaching them, and it sounds so hokey, and I am not a hokey guy, when we're teaching them that the end result is what's important, the win or the loss, then how can you possibly respect the game if all you care about is what happens at the end? If Coach Joe trained his kids all week to win that game, and then they lost, what do they feel like? They say, okay, we had one goal, and we failed. If your goal is, hey, this is a great team, and you may even say, chances are we're not going to win. What I'm going to judge you guys on is how you conduct yourselves as players and that you put your best effort out there. How cool would it be to go give the Bridgeport Chargers a real game? And you know what? You did. That was the best part. And I didn't say that. Somers gave Bridgeport a really good game. The guys played well. And I got to tell you, I'm sure of it. Part of the reason they played well, if not the major reason they played well, is because their minds were relaxed and they were focused on something very different. They had no delusions about beating you guys, and because of that, they came closer to beating you than they probably would have if they were all gung-ho during the week saying, go beat these guys up. Man.
I agree, Tony, that coaches can set the tone, because I think a lot of young athletes, and I'm guessing I was one of them too when I was young, that they follow the lead of their coach, and more so they want to impress their coach. And so if they see their coach strutting around, confrontational, maybe not quite sportsmanlike, like a Jim Harbaugh, if they see him at a youth age, if he's their coach, you're thinking to yourself, I want to play. I want him to like me. If I'm not playing, I want to start. If I am starting and I'm batting eighth, I want to bat fifth or whatever. I'm going to act like he acts, so he'll think I'm like him, and he'll like me more and maybe play me more. So I do think that the best chance young athletes have of learning sportsmanship is following the lead of whoever's deciding whether or not they're going to play.
And part of me I can't disagree with it, man. For an obnoxious guy with a typewriter, you make a lot of sense.
No.
But you know what? No, all kidding aside, I just don't know if it's fair or not to expect that of a kid at that age. I mean, you're spot on, but I got to tell you, I still think that we as coaches have to nurture that part of the mentality of the players because, again, listen, I had a son who plays football. I should say that. TJ's still alive and well. I have a son who plays football. He played against Bridgeport, which has a great program top to bottom. And, they could just go dominate. And instead, they are very gracious about how good they are, and they know how good they are. But we just got to teach these kids about, healthy rivalry. Because even listen, I'm a Steelers guy, right? Steelers-Ravens, one of the most heated and violent rivalries in all of sports. And at the end of the game, there are still guys that will pat each other on the shoulder and they'll say, you know what, great job. I'm going to look to kick your butt in a couple more weeks, but great job. And, that's what separates the real men from the boys. And I'm saying that, figuratively because girls are a part of this too. Just ask any softball player who spit on her hand to do a handshake. But the point is, most of us, and thank God, otherwise I wouldn't have a show. Most of us coaches fall down. Most of us coaches fail at what we do, and it's not because we're bad guys. Best of intentions. It's like, listen, a marriage that ends in a divorce. Best of intentions. So let's change the goals, guys. Let's stop hiring these hokey PhDs to come and speak at our schools and get guys like this to come in and teach you how to realign the priorities of what's going on in a kid's head before he puts the helmet on Saturday or Sunday. Because once you do that, set goals that they can achieve regardless of who they're playing, and you're going to see some really cool stuff like the end of that Somers-Bridgeport game. Because I'm telling you, guys, you're going to want to check it out on the Facebook page. There are two pictures that really are, I'll overstate it, could be life-changing if you're a coach. One is going to be watching this kid who, it's tough to see the second kid because the one guy's hugging him and he disappears in his shoulder pads. But the other one is really, and I've never seen this before. I've never done it, so I'm embarrassed that I've never done it, but I've never seen it. A team at that level, and you said the players did this. The players invited the Somers kids into their victory circle. And you know what? I wish I was there. I really wish I was there because there's not everyone's wondering where the hell is Coach Tony today? Because my shows are typically about who shot the coach, who urinated in the gas tank of the referee, and who spit on their hand. And by the way, any girl softball player, I hear any more girl softball players spit on their hands for a handshake because I got an email about another one who did it. I'm not just going to air it. Knock off the spitting in your hands. The point is, we as coach have to do something to realign. So, Coach Joe, I don't know how many more games are you guys done?
No, we have to balance our schedule. We have 2 more regular season games and potentially a playoff game.
Well, I wish you, obviously, the best of luck at what's going on, needless to say, and obviously the same to you guys in Bridgeport. Hey, Gregg, do me a favor, man. I know you're getting ready to cover the World Series, and thank you for taking your time out to grace the airways of Hey, Coach Tony. You promise to come back on again real soon?
Promise. It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me on, Tony.
Well, thanks for getting up so early after the plane ride. Good luck today, man, and I'll give you a call during the week. We'll catch up on stuff.
Okay. Bye-bye, Tony.
All right, man. That was Gregg Doyel from CBSSports.com. He is a very edgy, very entertaining guy, and he is a terrific writer. You got to check out his stuff. Any horror stories? I mean, you got some great coaches here. No, I'm curious. Listen, Bridgeport has lost an occasional game. Any of you guys have any real horror stories about the post-game handshake? Did anything ever happen that you're like, wow, let's hope he doesn't bring this one up? You got one. He's handing the microphone to Milton. You got one. What happened?
Not that I can recall of, though.
Come on.
We never had a horror. Beginning of the game, we might have.
Well, you know what? Hang on a second, because you know what? I got an email from Hank in Ardsley, and he brought up something, and we're going to wrap up by getting your thoughts on this. Hank from Ardsley, and thanks for chiming in all day, Ardsley. He says, why don't we do the post-game handshake and make it a pre-game handshake? Have the kids line up, shake hands, do their introductions before the game. And I got to tell you, in and of itself, not sure, but let me tell you why that might make sense. You will be much more prone. In other words, it's easy to hate a guy you never met. It's a lot harder to meet some guy who came over and said, hi, I'm Joe, I'm Tony, I'm Milt. Right, I'm Emmis. That might actually set up a much better demeanor for the course of the game. You guys are looking at me like I got 3 heads, man. Do you disagree with that? I'm not saying let's institute it tomorrow, but I thought it was an interesting thought.
in the game of football, I'm going to have to disagree, because in the beginning of the game, we want these kids as fired up as possible and going out and rip their heads off.
Well,
so with the handshake, I don't
can't you rip
think
their heads off and feel good about it?
I don't think our kids would feel good about it. I shook this kid's hand and I had to be nice to him. So
well,
I don't think.
Hank and Ardsley, with the exception of football, I think you're on to something. Guys, all kidding aside, Coach Emmis, Coach Milton, Coach Joe, you guys did something very, very cool. The show is going to be up on YouTube sometime tomorrow. Hey, guys, this was great. Please come back. Tune in every Saturday at 9 for Hey, Coach Tony.